Welcome to the Big Play Tailgate, everybody. Surrounded by the Bowl LIX, Bob and Gage, Ryan Tyler, Scott Pennyman, and I'm Tony Zarella, our post-Super Bowl edition and final tailgate of the season until next season. And I think, almost a week later, we're still... I know it's an emotional time.
It really is.
I'll still talk to you sometimes.
Okay. You guys can keep in touch. I think, almost 5 days later... I think there's still kind of a what the hell did we witness on Super Bowl Sunday? What was your take, Bob, by mid-second quarter?
Why haven't I seen first downs? Why haven't I seen the Chiefs getting first downs? I mean, they were always good at running for enough, throwing it to Kelsey for enough, Pachenko for enough. I mean, it just seemed like it was easy. And then I realized that in the second quarter, it was their second first down. I'm thinking, well, they're on a roll now, baby.
Well, as we go through the show, we're going to break down our thoughts on Super Bowl 59, talk about possibly a future Hall of Famer. Is it possible he'd actually be coming to Cleveland? I hope not. As Gage would phrase it, some stark overreactions, the halftime show. But I want to go to Scott Pennyman here in Atlanta. And Scott, I wanted to make sure I had this right. The Chiefs ran once in their first four possessions, and then you look up and you're down 17-0.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to run then when you're down 17-0, right? Yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting game plan for a team and a head coach that is normally so prepared for what happens throughout the course of a game, and a head coach that normally is able to adjust the game plan as the game goes along. They just seem stubborn in this game. It's like they came in with a plan. They said, if that plan doesn't work, we're just going to lose. And that's what happened.
He never looked more like a walrus than Sunday. Reed.
They moved like a walrus.
Yeah. Cuckoo, ka-choo.
I mean, they looked lost. I've never seen the Chiefs look lost, not since like the days of Alex Smith. Nothing against Alex Smith, but that was, we're talking pre-Patrick Mahomes era. I've never seen the Chiefs look so out of place on a football field before. I've never seen such the defense just locked every single person down. The offensive line on the Kansas City Chiefs failed on so many occasions. They almost gave up a Super Bowl record amount of sacks, which, says it's the name of the game right there. And then, of course, the final score not actually showing how bad the game was. In reality, the game was 40-6. And then when you have the backup starting to come in the Super Bowl, there's a mistake.
Ryan, I know you've talked about this on your show, but let me ask you, are the Eagles this good?
I don't think at this point you can say they're not. I mean, I talked about the defense before on every single level, from the secondary, the middle linebackers, down to the defensive front. I mean, the front four for the Eagles was Jalen Hurts won Super Bowl MVP. I get that, but if you gave the MVP to a position group, it was the defensive line. The way that they completely shifted the dynamic of that game. They literally manipulated the game in every single play, getting to Patrick Mahomes. It was like anything I've ever seen. Talk about a defensive front that well in the Super Bowl. I mean, you're looking at like Michael Strahan back when the Giants beat Brady. That's how good they were.
I know on the surface what I just asked is a dumb question. Are the Eagles this good? Of course they are. They did it. We witnessed it. Right. The reason I ask it is they were good all year. They had the top-ranked defense, Bob. They didn't look this dominant every week. And I wonder if it's matchups. Is it what Scott said, stubbornness? I didn't believe what I was watching.
I mean, as the game was going on, I was going through, okay, are they just trying to show, are they tired of being the other guys? It's the Chiefs and somebody else, and they just went after it. I just think their game plan was really good, and they have a lot of talent. I mean, face it, in the beginning, Saquon Barkley was, he was having some trouble up front. I mean, they were whacking on him pretty good. And then, of course, Hurts starts running, and then Saquon is going again. And it just, I don't know. I guess one of the questions is, everybody talks about Spagnuolo, about the defense coordinator over there with the Chiefs and how good he is. And not only could he not do anything in the first half, but given time to make adjustments at halftime, it didn't get any better.
You just
well, I tell you.
Go ahead, Scott. I'm looking at this matchup. It kind of reminded me of the Seahawks-Broncos matchup where Peyton Manning was just overwhelmed from the beginning, and that's one of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time.
For sure. It definitely reminded me of that Super Bowl, but I guess this is the time to take a little victory lap, because if you pull up last week's show, remember one of the things I did pick the Eagles, and one of the things I cited was their defensive line. I thought that the pressure that they would get up the middle from Jalen Carter and that defensive line would be, or potentially could be, the difference in the game. And when you look at how they pass rush, they really sent Sweat and those other guys from the outside, and they drew Mahomes to the middle, and he really had no chance. So, like you mentioned, in that Seahawks Super Bowl against the Broncos, they dominated the game up front, and it really gave Patrick Mahomes or the running game no chance.
You know what, Scott? And just an observation, you're right about that. And the one thing, in order to have that kind of pressure on Mahomes without blitzing, I mean, you've got to have lane control. You've got to have guys that stay outside, especially, against guys that can escape pretty easily. You got to have guys to stay outside, and you got the middle guys have to be able to push and take up the room, so he's got nowhere to go, and they did that perfectly.
For sure. And I think it's like what Scott said. The Chiefs went in with a game plan and then just didn't alter it. Any professional sport, any sport at any level, adjustments are arguably the most important aspect of a game. The Eagles' run game wasn't going the way it had the entire season, and they adjusted. The Chiefs did not do the same. The Chiefs couldn't get a run game going. They couldn't get the pass game going. Like you said, they weren't throwing blitzes at all, and that allowed all the defensive backs and safeties to cover every aspect of the field.
You know what? In 1991, those were the Raiders. And we were in the AFC Championship game against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. And at halftime, we battled back and forth the first half. And at halftime, it was 41-0. And we were losing. And
Trailing, not losing.
And we said, we got trailing. Yeah. I said, we got a lot to do. And right before we all went back on the field after halftime, when the coaches are all yelling at us and stuff, Marcus Allen gets up and goes, "Come on, get it together. We're the Raiders. We got to do this. If they scored 41 points in the first half, we can score 41 in the second half. Can't we?" He literally said,
said that
with a question mark on it.
But that's what's crazy though, because when they were down 27-0 or whatever it was before halftime, I fully expected the Chiefs come out in the second half and make great adjustments all the time.
Yeah,
they didn't do that. I did not count them out by halftime.
Me too. Ryan, who's this bigger for? Jalen Hurts or Sirianni?
I'll go for well in terms of job security, in terms of getting the monkey off your back. I think Nick Sirianni. But in terms of, and we can talk about this in maybe the next segment because I know we got to take a break here, but the way that Jalen Hurts, the narrative around him has shifted, he gets the accolades now, and I can make an argument that Jalen Hurts right now is a better Hall of Fame lock than guys like Josh Allen, guys like Joe Burrow. And that's never the case that you put him ahead of them in quarterback rankings, but in terms of accolades and who's going to Canton, I think it's undeniable that Jalen Hurts now, after winning Super Bowl MVP in a ring, is ahead of those guys.
Wow. Scott, take that into the break. Lead us off when we come back. We'll be right back. All right, just before the break, Ryan made the case that you could make the case that Jalen Hurts is more of a lock for the Hall of Fame right now than Joe Burrow or Josh Allen. Scott, your take?
Hall of Fame, I don't know. We have to wait and see how the rest of his career plays out. But when you look at this is certainly bigger for his legacy than it is Nick Sirianni. You talked about that because Doug Peterson won the Super Bowl with the Eagles, and he was fired within a few years. When you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback like Jalen Hurts, that goes with you can ride that forever once you become a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I mean, Aaron Rodgers won a Super Bowl 15 years ago, and he's still riding that Super Bowl champion into, it changed how we look at him. Drew Brees only won one Super Bowl in his career, and it changed the way we looked at him. Jalen Hurts, from this point forward, his career changes forever. We will always look at him as a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and we can never say that he can't do it because he did it.
He dropped that dime. It was a spectacular pass, the deep ball, and he played a great game. He did. He played I said last week going into this, Gage, I don't know what it is, but I can't, and maybe I fell, into that trap where, you go back to Alabama being benched at halftime and then he transfers and all of that stuff. I mean, he's just not quite there. He was there on this day.
Well, I think Jalen Hurts his whole career from college onward. I mean, he was a true freshman starting at Alabama. That doesn't happen. The true freshmen don't start, especially at these gigantic schools that are playing for championships every single year.
Right.
I think he's had a chip on his shoulder ever since that first year at Alabama. I think he goes to Oklahoma. He becomes, the star that he thought he could be. And then he goes to the Eagles. And, of course, he joined a decent program. The head coaching and everything has been there for the last year. Despite what you may say about Nick Sirianni, I think he's a solid coach. But I think that chip on his shoulder has just led to him being present in these big moments. I think he hasn't let the moment overtake him. He's had some struggles with injury. He's had some struggles with just figuring it all out and piecing it together. This season, it all came together, even despite that concussion toward the end of the regular season. He that chip on his shoulder is just it was so massive. And I think when you're a quarterback, especially at this level, that's such an important thing to have. And even after winning a Super Bowl, like Tom Brady's chip never left his shoulder. 7 Super Bowls in, and I think that's really important. And I think Jalen Hurts has.
He was
that
a little
factor.
chippy on TV on Sunday too. So, but
I mean, just think about it though.
And this isn't going against Jalen in any way, but you're going to start seeing when you get a performance like that, people start expecting it. There will be other teams coming after him. They used to do that, say that about Notre Dame back in the day. Everybody's coming for you because you got the name. But people are going to be coming after him. How he reacts to all those different attacks, that will show his growth, his maturity, and then how far he goes in the post-career stuff.
Scotty, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say that when you look at Jalen Hurts' career, even going back to college, the guy has always been a winner. He won at Alabama. He took Oklahoma to the playoffs, and he's made the playoffs every year since he's been in the NFL. He's done nothing but win. So this Super Bowl championship and Super Bowl MVP really just cements his legacy as one of the great winners in the game today.
Yep. Well, that's fair enough. The confetti was still falling, and already people, because of what people do, have to look ahead to, can the Eagles repeat? You can take a breath before you get to that point. However, and this kind of leads us to our next segment, to the stark overreactions, but one of them is that the Chiefs are done, and now the Eagles are going to be around forever. Somebody help me with this.
No. Look, I mean, the Chiefs aren't done. The Chiefs are still, as long as you have Patrick Mahomes, they still have young enough weapons around him. I think they'll be fine. Would Travis Kelce still be a part of things moving forward? I don't know. He's kind of getting up there, but the Chiefs are one of those organizations that they can just rebuild around what they have. And when the Patriots were in the middle of their dynasty, I mean, Tom Brady didn't win his 4th Super Bowl until 14, 15 years into his career. So to think that the Chiefs are done when you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid is crazy. I think they'll be right back in this position for the next few years.
Yeah, it was a 10-year gap between Brady's 3rd and 4th Super Bowl. I mean, 10 years, and that includes the heartbreak of the 2007 season. I mean, you're going to go through trials and tribulations. This game obviously was not Patrick Mahomes' best, an 86 QBR, not it's not to the level we expect from Patrick Mahomes, especially not in these big games. But
you see, you know what? Okay, you see the Eagles rose to the occasion. The Eagles were great all year, by the way. I mean, we were talking about the Lions all year and other teams, and the Bills was everybody's emotional choice to go. And the Eagles were solid and great all year. However, when you watched it play out on Super Bowl Sunday, it takes it to a different level, in my mind anyway, and then you start thinking, wow, even though they lose Kellen Moore, can they keep this thing rolling? Yeah. And maybe they can. I don't know. I don't know if they're a one-shot deal or if they're really built to stay, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go ahead and predict the Eagles to repeat. I mean, that's not a common thing we see in the NFL, especially when you're losing a guy like Kellen Moore. I mean, I go back when they went to the Super Bowl, you lost to the Chiefs, you lost both Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen. You had the down year for the Eagles' expectations. You still made the playoffs, but you got bounced in the first round. And the NFL, everything changes every single year. I would I'd give the Chiefs a better chance to go to the Super Bowl, not win it, to go to the Super Bowl than maybe the Eagles next year. With Jaden Daniels coming up, I don't know if the Lions are going to be what they are, but Patrick Mahomes has proven that he can be that great for that stretch of time. The Chiefs as well. Eagles haven't done that yet. Not to say they can't do it, but I'll go where I have evidence of the Chiefs doing it.
I want to take a break.
Gage, go ahead. Say something? Because you were making a comment to me earlier that that Tom Brady had a quarterback rating along the way of, really,
just 2019.
Really low.
2019 and that Super Bowl against the Rams, it was a very low-scoring game. I think 1 touchdown total was scored. He had a 71 QBR. I mean, he's up there. This is going to happen to great quarterbacks. Of course, like Ryan said, I think the Eagles have a tough road ahead of them. I think the Chiefs have made us all believe that repeating a Super Bowl is easy, or at least easier than it is. It doesn't happen often at all, as evident by how many times it's happened in the past. And so the Eagles going back repeating, questionable about that, especially when they're going to be losing players like Sweat. It's questionable, but the Chiefs' legacy is still there. It's going to be going for like Scott said, as long as Mahomes is there.
So that gets us into the overreactions. I want to take a break, but also overreactions concerning the Browns as well when the Big Play Tailgate rolls on. I know it's the biggest stage in the world. In fact, every year there's more millions watching, which makes me always wonder, why weren't they watching last year? How does this number keep getting bigger? Are there more people with, platforms to watch? I don't know. But can't Patrick Mahomes, Scott, can't he have a bad game?
I mean, it's really hard to win a Super Bowl, right? So I mean, even when we look at Tom Brady's career, everyone talks about can Mahomes be the potential GOAT? Brady didn't win every Super Bowl; he lost 3 of them. So I think Patrick Mahomes, he had a bad game. It happens sometimes, especially on this stage, and he can still be the greatest quarterback to ever play. We'll just have to wait and see how the rest of his career turns out.
Gage, you mentioned the 10-year gap between Brady's 3rd Super Bowl win because he had the 3 early. Yep. A couple weren't 2 back-to-back, right? And then,
Yep.
And then he goes 10 years, right?
Yep.
I mean, Pat's young.
Yeah, and like the thing with Mahomes is he'll play as long as he wants to in the Chiefs organization. He's not going anywhere. I know with this whole Luka trade, let's not get off thing, but like no superstar in any sport feels as safe as they used to. But Mahomes is going to be a Chief for life. That's undeniable. They're paying him like the superstar he is.
Yeah.
Even though other lesser quarterbacks are getting more money at this point.
The only thing that could throw Mahomes off is if he gets emotionally distracted by his father fighting John Rocker. I think that's the thing that could really throw his career.
Well, I think that Mahomes he's been pretty good at like toning like out at the family stuff. Obviously, we know about his brother and all the stuff with that, and his wife and distractions, quote unquote. He's pretty good at locking in and focusing. He'll play as long as he wants. I don't think it'll be 10 years before the Chiefs get another Super Bowl. I really don't. The organization is too good as a whole, and Mahomes is too good of a player to not elevate the entire roster around him regardless.
Ryan, I know I'm off track here, but was that staged, Mahomes Rocker?
You'd think so, just because of how quickly they got the Barstool fight organized. It seems too convenient. Like, you needed to let it simmer, get a couple more public beef sessions before you organize the event. So I'm going to say, yeah, it was.
I don't know, Scotty. I just don't know. The people buy this stuff. Fine. Enjoy it. You bought the Mike Tyson thing, too. So I don't get it.
I mean, how long do we watch professional wrestling before they came and told us it's entertainment? Man, we were into that, man.
Well, but who would stage something like that? Like, who sat in a back room and said, I know, let's let 2 late 90s relief pitchers fight on the streets of the Super Bowl. That's it. That'd be a great idea. Who would ever come up with that? I mean, it couldn't be staged, right?
A genius, that's who.
That's right.
Maybe they
Get
worked
me
it
a guy
out.
who pitched for 11 teams and will square off against the biggest racists in the history of Major League Baseball. That'll bring the people.
Maybe they worked it out. They said, "Hey, we need some
drop
props
some
here
buzz,
quick."
yeah.
Hey, is Travis Kelce done? I know, Scott, you mentioned, because he said on his podcast, let me have time. Who doesn't want time to take a breath after what they've been going through in that run? But, I mean, do you really think he's washed up?
I don't think he's washed up. I think he still has another season or 2. I mean, maybe a little mentally exhausted. Look, people don't understand. These Super Bowl runs all these years, it takes a toll on you physically and mentally. So did he look a little just exhausted and tired from all those Super Bowl runs? Maybe, and maybe he gets away from all of this and says, you know what? I don't really have much left to play for. I've won my Super Bowls. I've lost a couple. This could be the end. But again, like I talked about last week, he has a lot of reasons to want to stay in that limelight. So I think he'll stay for another year or 2 and then figure things out. But honestly, when you think about it, as far as a legacy thing, there's really not much of a reason for him to continue to play.
The thing too is there's a lot of reasons to play. And for instance, Tom Brady played and made a lot of money, and then he got to marry a model. But that didn't work out. So now Kelsey's got Taylor Swift. And maybe he's saying, hey, it's time to – maybe it won't work out.
Hey,
maybe I'll end up with Cardi B.
That's a great way to
something.
go into a relationship.
Yeah. Maybe it won't work prenup. Oh, listen, Bob, as a professional athlete, did you, after your body healed for a few months, was that drive ticking again as you get into the summer? That's probably the toughest thing to walk away from.
Oh, absolutely.
Not the money. But you have the money.
I went for – you remember when I played, right?
I do.
Okay. After
was that a money reference?
Yeah, it was. Even after 14 years, I wanted to go back out there, and the Raiders weren't going to re-sign me. And I thought to myself, crap, if the Raiders don't want me, nobody does. So, but I still had the desire to go out there, and I don't know that everybody's like that. I mean, Jim Brown was able to walk away in his prime. I don't know. Everybody's different.
Then that's exactly it. Every player is different. I think every player that's in the NFL is going to be wanting to compete. I mean, you don't become a professional athlete without loving competition, right? And that doesn't go away just because you're getting a little up there, your body's not doing the same things it used to do. Travis Kelce is a competitor. He loves to compete. That's obvious based on the intensity in which he plays his game. He may have lost a step here and there. Like Scott said, I think he's got 1 or 2 years left. That said, I think he's 35 years old. There's so much life for him to live after he retires from football. And I think if he doesn't play now, he's never going to get to play again.
Another overreaction, Ryan. Are the Browns done for years to come?
Fortunately, they'll probably still be playing football, I would imagine. But I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, it's hinging on Myles Garrett, of course, but even then, if he leaves, I mean, listen, it comes down to nailing the draft. You can be as good as you are, but look at the Chiefs. Why are they successful this long? Is because they draft well. They get cheap talent, and then you have a star quarterback. It all comes down to the quarterback. If you draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders this year, and he turns out, you saw with Jaden Daniels, you can turn this thing around in 2 to 3 years. Now, would that be harder without Myles? Of course it would be, but you can still get to that point. You just need a damn quarterback. So I don't think they're done for a while.
Yeah,
but it might be 1-2 years. They might stink a little bit.
It always seems like the Browns, though, they're like, oh, we got the quarterback. First round pick, we've got the quarterback, here we go. And they kind of forget about the rest of the guys. When you look at somebody like the Chiefs or somebody, they go and they pull somebody in, and maybe they're not even high up on the first round, but they come in and they become part of a team that's been working together. And but with the Browns, there is no real working together. Either you're trying to get out or you're just trying to retire.
Well, maybe there's a future Hall of Fame quarterback already mentioned in this show that could be on the Browns' horizon. I mean, this is really not the direction I'd want to go in, but we'll dissect that and more when the tailgate continues. Back here on the tailgate with the Bowl LIX, Ryan Tyler, Scott Pennyman. I'm Tony Zarella. Can you see a scenario where Aaron Rodgers actually ends up with the Browns?
Sadly, yes, and only because I have very little faith in the Browns as an organization. I think they see a big name and they want it. That's what happened with Deshaun Watson. Let's not forget we signed Deshaun Watson after everything came out about the sexual assault and things like that. And we said, this guy was great. He hasn't played for 2 years, but he was great. Let's sign him. The name value of Aaron Rodgers, obviously it commands respect, despite what you might think of him as a person, what you might think how he's played the last few years of his career. He's still Aaron Rodgers, a 4-time NFL MVP. You don't get that by accident. Sure, he may still be riding that 15-year-old Super Bowl win. But the problem with the Browns is they see a name like that, and I feel like they see an answer. And so while I don't think they're going to do it, I don't think they would stoop that low, especially considering the price tag that an Aaron Rodgers is going to command just by name alone. But there is a situation I can see the Browns at least expressing interest, and that scares me.
Scott, I think my thing with Aaron Rodgers is I don't care about the money. It's not my money. I think they could talk themselves into saying he's the bridge guy. He's a veteran. We drafted this kid at 2, whoever that is. My problem with it is the noise, the weird vibe that really seems to exist with him. This is not a franchise that should want any part of something like that.
I agree with those things, Tony, but when you think about where they're at right now, right? I mean, the Deshaun Watson trade is much like herpes. It's the gift that keeps on giving. When you think about where they're at with that, they don't have a whole lot of flexibility. So when you think about where they're moving forward to, if you're going to draft someone like Shedeur Sanders at number 2 overall, bringing in a veteran mentor bridge quarterback like Aaron Rodgers seems to be not so bad of an idea, just looking at where they're at right now, because it gives them maybe a guy who you throw in there for 7 or 8 games who might not be that expensive. He clearly is a great quarterback, and it might not be a bad guy for Shedeur Sanders to learn behind maybe for a year or so before he's ready to take the reins and move forward. Because if you're the Browns right now, you don't have a lot of flexibility because that Deshaun Watson trade is still kicking you.
Fair enough, but you used a word, mentor. Do you think Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy that would mentor somebody under him, even though he knows, hey, look, I'm down to the last year or two of my career. Maybe it's different now, but he doesn't strike me as that guy. Am I wrong?
Well, if he wants to continue to play NFL football, I think he'll have to be that guy, because where you look at the situation he's in right now, I don't think he's that sought after as far as a lot of these teams that are looking for quarterbacks right now. So to me, this seems like the kind of marriage there that it can benefit both sides to an extent. They almost kind of need each other. I think when you look at the Browns, if they don't win this year, Stefanski and Andrew Berry are probably going to be gone. So they probably want someone who knows what they're doing at the quarterback position, maybe not a rookie. And when you look at Aaron Rodgers, he may need the Browns because he probably wants to be on a team that he thinks can win a little something this year and not be with a garbage sort of team. And if he wants to continue to play NFL football, that may be the best opportunity he has.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I just think that Rodgers, and I don't know if I should use the word deluded, but I think he's kind of he's a little deluded about where he is in his career. I think he still sees himself as a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, and I'm not saying he can't necessarily be that. But I think he's going to want – I don't think he's going to want to come to the Browns. I think he's going to want to go somewhere where he can see a clear path forward because he knows he only has a few years left. Yeah. I think he's going for another Super Bowl. I think it haunts him that he only won in 2010, and it's been 15 years since. So we'll see how it plays.
Ryan, what's your take on this?
I think if what old Jimmy Haslam wants to do is, does he want to win games and dissolve the drama in Berea, or does he want to sell tickets? Because if it's the latter, then Aaron Rodgers would be the move. But the way I look at it is, you're going to draft a quarterback at 2, I assume, and without a doubt, you need to bring in a veteran to either bridge and mentor this guy. Hey, let's go get, instead of Aaron Rodgers, how about this name, Derek Carr? If he gets cut by the Raiders, I would love to have him come, the Saints. I would love to have him come here. I think it's less drama than Aaron Rodgers. Are we really going to pretend that you get less production from Derek Carr than Aaron Rodgers? I don't think so. And you dissolve this whole drama part. You don't dissolve it, but why add fuel to the fire after you just got not rid of, technically,
Bob,
but this
I know
Deshaun
you're
Watson.
deck here, but Ryan, do you think Jimmy cares about the drama?
I think he has to, because I think he wants to win. Don't get me wrong.
I do too.
And if that's the formula, you can't win with all this drama BS.
I do too. I don't know that he's made the right decisions or brought in the right people or maintained the right people to win at this point. However, I do believe he wants to win. And, nobody's I mean, he's going to make money. The team's going to triple in value every 10 years. We get it. He has enough money. I think he wants to win.
Now, I was going to say that we haven't been able to build a team around a number one draft choice quarterback. Any of the big expectation quarterbacks. In fact, we've ruined most of their careers. Baker got out.
Baker barely clawed his way out.
Baker clawed his way out. But a bridge guy, like Aaron, and I have no problem with Aaron Rodgers. I know that teams start getting a little squirrely when you start getting injured. It becomes dependability, how long you're going to be out there, whether, he with his Achilles and everything. He's older. He just had the tear. But he'd be the guy because it would only be a year or so. And you could try and build the rest of the people around there. He might actually be able to draw some free agents from other places that might want to go and play with Aaron Rodgers, even though, he's towards the end.
Scott, I have, how people say Chiefs fatigue? I have rebuild fatigue. I really do. And I say to Browns, because at least we get to vent.
So does Miles.
Yes, he does. And I always say to my buddies who, some of them were at the 1964 championship game, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. And you stay in there and keep the faith, and I don't know how you do it, man. How do you do it?
Well, the Browns are really good at being able to suck fans back in every single year with some sort of acquisition or suck them in with a high draft pick or whatever. They're really good at that. So I'm pretty sure at some point this offseason, the Browns would do something that's going to – and look, the Browns fans are pretty much like that ex that, the Browns are like that husband who batters you. And then the fans are like, all you have to do is just do that small thing just to suck them back in again. And now they're back with you. That's what the Browns are to the fan base. So I'm sure they'll do something this offseason to suck the fans back in and get them all excited for what will probably be a 6-11 season.
And Saturday is Valentine's Day. So they'll be doing a lot of sucking back in.
See, I've always
6-11.
I've always considered.
We can only dream.
Well, I had, and by the way, 20 years ago, I think I told you before. 20 years ago, I bought a shirt that said "Once more before I die," and I thought it was like the coolest shirt. And 20 years later, anymore. I pulled it out of the thing, and I'm like, "Wow, this is
morbid.
This is morbid." Yeah.
See,
maybe 2.
I've always equated Browns fans, and this includes myself. I'm a Browns fan through and through. I've always considered Browns fans like Cowboys fans with slightly less delusion, because obviously Browns fans most years are going to admit, we're going to try and we're going to do our best, but we get there. But we're not, at least the Cowboys, who are thinking they're still going to the Super Bowl after 27 plus years.
And you were born right in Los Angeles, and your dad, because you'd been with the Raiders, and it would, that says a lot about Browns fans. I mean, I'm serious. I'm giving you credit here.
For sure.
That, some people might think it would have been hipper to be a Raiders fan. There are times when
I may have dabbled.
But-
With the Raiders.
Oh my God. All right, let's talk more about the draft and some more overreactions when the tailgate rolls on. Obviously, anything you watch or listen to locally is going to be centered on the Browns and the upcoming draft. And I've said this forever, having covered more than a few NFL teams, that the draft in other cities, if they're successful, and some are, isn't like this. It's not, you supplement what you already have and you keep the train on the track and you keep rolling. And here it was always the Super Bowl, right? The excitement and the hype level. Yeah. And then we got away from it for a minute, and it was such a relief to not have it like that. And Ryan, here we are again.
Honestly, I look at it the way I choose to look at it, maybe because I'm very depressed about the Browns and I need a light at the end of the tunnel, is, listen, you could be the Steelers perpetually 500, a little bit above, never have a losing season, but get bounced in the first round. At least we have something exciting. We get a young talent that potentially could, right? Hope is the dangerous thing. It's the most dangerous thing in the world because it gets you sucked back in, as we talked about last segment. So if you draft a guy like Shador, could it not work? Yeah, of course. Odds are it won't, as history will tell you. But there's always that small chance that when you get a high draft pick, you get a guy like that can come in and shift things around. It makes football fun again.
Hey,
Ryan, if you ever need to talk.
Thanks, Bob.
Because
I do
I've
need
been
a
through
therapist.
the whole thing.
Okay.
So
nice.
give me a call.
Thank you. Talk to me.
Yeah, thank you.
Uh-oh. We have a family thing going on.
Dang.
Hey, it's not just the Browns. In fairness to the
fixed
Browns,
yours.
Gage, half the first-round picks don't work. Half of them, 50%, don't work out.
I mean, that's the nature of drafting. I mean, and especially when you're talking in the NFL, you're expected to come out of college and go directly into the starting lineup and make a difference. Other sports aren't like that. I mean, basketball to an extent is, but like if you're getting into the second round, you're getting developed. Like there's years of development going into you. And then baseball is the most extreme example. Obviously, there's 6 levels of the minor leagues before you get to the pro level. Obviously, football players are in college a little bit longer. Baseball players a lot of the times come out of high school. College does the one and done for basketball.
Yeah.
You're 3 years for football before the NFL draft. So you're getting more experience, but at the same time, you're expected to go in there and play against the best players of college football from every team all come together into the league. I mean, you may be the man in college, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be the man in the NFL because you're playing with other people that were the man. Everyone in the NFL was the man at one time.
Well, there's so many factors: coaching, injuries, and talent. You're hype. You're just not that guy. And mismatches again in college and all that stuff. Scott, I'm a big believer. I always have been. If you have the second overall pick, use the second overall pick. Don't trade down. Do not do it. You know who you want. Go get him. I don't care what other people say or think and where they value that guy. I don't care. If you need a right tackle, go get the best right tackle at number 2. Don't play around.
I agree, Tony, and I do think they will use the pick, and I think they'll take a player, and they probably will take a quarterback. But one thing I thought is kind of funny, doesn't it seem like it was just yesterday, Tony, when me and you were covering the 2018 NFL scouting combine, and Baker Mayfield was the guy who they drafted number 1 overall, and they took Denzel Ward, and it looked like the future was so bright, and now here we are. Baker Mayfield is a franchise quarterback, but for another franchise, and Denzel Ward is probably going to be the next guy out after Myles Garrett leaves. And so what that lets me know is it's not the players that they're getting wrong that they're drafting. It's the organization. No matter who they draft is probably going to turn out to be bad, because when you have an organization that grooms players as poorly as the Browns does, it doesn't matter who you draft. So they'll take Shedeur Sanders and we'll probably be looking for another quarterback in 4 years because they won't raise him right, because they never raise anybody right.
Oh, that's terrifying. You know what? It does seem like a minute ago you and I were in Indy, and you know what I remember most about that was leading up to that the 3 days that we were there for the combine. I remember Lamar Jackson being asked. I was, they have the podiums, and you just go from one to the other. And
Yeah.
so I'm there for Lamar Jackson too. And one of the first questions was, "Will you switch to wide receiver?" And I remember tweeting this out at the time. I looked at his numbers and I looked at Sam Darnold's numbers, and I looked at the core of their college years. So not all 4 years, but I think it was their 2 best years, and their numbers were identical. They were identical. And I remember tweeting out, one's being touted as the potential number 1 pick in the draft at quarterback. The other just got asked if he'll switch to wide receiver.
I remember that. Very well, and it's good they kept him at quarterback, right? I mean, he's done okay for himself as a quarterback, right? I mean, so yeah, I mean, it's always interesting what the theories are for these players at the combine. That was a really fun combine to cover. Should have been a franchise-altering combine for the Cleveland Browns had they did things right, but it was franchise-altering, all right, because you drafted a guy number 1 overall who you traded to become somebody else's franchise quarterback.
So if you were praying, please make this a franchise-altering draft, you should have been more specific.
It was franchise-altering for the Buccaneers.
I mean,
Send us a check.
well, no, because the Browns, the way the Browns handled the Baker Mayfield thing, just real quick. The way, obviously, we all know it was awful. We all know the way he was treated. We gave him up, someone that had taken us to almost an AFC Championship game, and then 2 years later, we're saying, actually, we'd rather have this person who hasn't played in 2 years.
Yeah.
I still can't get over it. I'm still mad at it. It makes it hard to be a Browns fan. It's stuff like that makes it so difficult. We had a chance. We had a future. And they threw it away for someone that didn't deserve it.
And the thing is, too, the way he played that year, Baker, when he went out there and he injured this and he injured that, he had like a bone that something happened in his shoulder. I mean, he had multiple injuries, and the coaches all knew about it because the trainers have to know about it, and they let him go back out there again. And he played hard and he played through the pain. And then after the season, they said, "Oh, adios."
This the last block?
No.
We got one more after
Yes.
this? Okay, because I want to talk about this halftime show, and I'll full disclosure, I can't comment on the halftime show. I never watch the halftime show. It's an extended halftime. Usually they're too quick. I use it as a cigar break outside, and then I come in and I ask my family, "How was the halftime show?" And everybody had a reaction to this. Bob, I want yours.
Okay.
When the tailgate continues. Open to anybody. Should we just accept the fact that no matter who performs at the halftime, there's going to be constant, or let me use immediate analysis, if not criticism? Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fair to say. Obviously, when you have 121 million people watching anything, there's going to be opinions, especially in the social media age we're at. So it's been very interesting to see how this whole Kendrick Lamar halftime show has played out. On one hand, I've been seeing countless videos of people's parents and grandparents watching it, just like the blankest stare on their face, confused out of their minds.
Yeah.
I will say some of it was a little hard to understand. I'm not personally a Kendrick Lamar guy. I do find his beef with Drake to be hilarious. So that was entertaining for me, but I think a lot of people are feeling the same as I am, that it was fine.
Real quick, what's going on with him and Drake?
So
do you know?
Yeah, so they just had I don't even know who started it, but they started putting out diss tracks for each other. Kendrick called Drake a pedophile in what became the song of the year, and then he performed it at the Super Bowl, and he didn't even have to say pedophile because the entire stadium said it for him.
And didn't they do that at the Grammys?
Yep.
People were yelling at the Grammys.
And just imagine being Drake watching the game, and you just have to sit there like this as this guy calls you a predator on live TV.
121 million people
Yeah.
just heard him say that.
Go have a cigar and not watch
Yeah,
the
there you go.
halftime show. Well, that's the
probably
other
what
thing.
he did.
Scott, you know what? If Kendrick Lamar is not your cup of tea, don't watch it.
Exactly. Look, I mean, I think Kendrick Lamar is one of those artists where he's a crossover mainstream artist, but not like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, not that kind of crossover mainstream. And his performance had a lot of subliminal messages that unless you're a real hip hop or Kendrick Lamar fan, you wouldn't have understood it. So, yeah, I get those videos you see of a lot of people that didn't really understand what they were watching or didn't really get it, because for as great as Kendrick Lamar has been and how important he has been to hip hop, he might not be the best live performer. So I think that played a role, too. But, yeah, I mean, if you're a football fan, you're not really watching this for the halftime performance anyway. You just want to get the teams back out there and play the second half.
Anybody going to take before I move on?
Watching it, I thought it had lots of pretty colors.
There you go.
That's it.
And that CTE is really hitting you hard.
Yeah, it really. I
gonna
didn't have. I couldn't understand it. He talks way too fast. That might be a CTE thing. I don't know. So I put on the closed caption. And the closed caption started putting out gibberish. So I'm just like, oh, nothing can help me now.
Nothing. You're gone.
Oh,
Ryan?
man.
Yeah, I mean, any time that it's like, let's say, for instance, this year it was rap, you're always going to have people immediately, regardless of their performance, not like it. They're going to have opinions on it because that's not their style. That's not my case. I wasn't the biggest fan, but I did enjoy Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem when it was a few years ago. I think what went wrong, and maybe Kendrick was trying to get a message across, promote an album, but I think when an artist doesn't play on the biggest stage, his best songs, the most well-known songs, you're immediately going to draw criticism. That was only mine. There were plenty of songs that I love of his that are way more popular than he played, and he just didn't play them.
I hate that. It's like going to a concert and the guy wants new material. No. Play the hits. My car's running. I don't want to be here long. Let me get out of here.
I also did some reading on that, and somebody called me up and said, they put a contract out to Jay-Z to handle the halftime. I said, the league would never do something like that. They handle it every year by themselves. And I looked it up, and it turns out till 2028, Jay-Z Entertainment is the one responsible for getting halftime work.
The
to get the halftime show. Yeah.
All right, speaking of musicians, real quick commercials. Am I the only one that was literally terrified by the Seal commercial?
No.
That was good word.
Haunting.
Good word.
To the nth degree. I'm honestly though surprised it's never happened before. Like with how
what, a guy
no
morphed into a seal?
No, well his name is Seal, and think about how ridiculous Super Bowl commercials have been for the last 15 years.
Thank God Meatloaf wasn't in that.
Now
position.
that would have been that's something I would have paid to see.
And if they did all that CGI stuff for Seal, you'd think they would have cleared his face up.
Oh, I'm stunned that maybe my wife said maybe he needs money. I mean, I'm stunned that he would allow something like that.
Well, you say it's crazy. It was crazy. Like, when have they ever done that? Put morph a guy into a seal. Well, fun fact, what that commercial reminded me of, there's a movie called Tusk, and I'm not going to go into it, but a guy gets morphed into not a seal, but a walrus. And this commercial reminded me of the sequel of it. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Human Centipede, but it's along those lines.
Oh, dear God.
And that's exactly what that commercial hauntingly reminded me of.
And the main character from there is now coaching the Kansas City Chiefs.
There you go. I wonder what
Scott.
I wonder what Seal thought after it was all done.
I'm
Hey,
sure
here's the
when the money hit
finished
his
product.
I'm sure when the money hit his account,
That's what my wife said. She's
But
like,
look, man, sometimes you just need the money. Didn't Jerry Rice do a commercial for Popeye's Chicken where he wore like some dumb chicken hat? So sometimes you just need the money, man. I don't know. I mean, everybody has a price.
Yeah, don't fault a guy.
I can see how Jerry Rice would need the money.
By the way, I'd wear a chicken. By the way, I'd wear a chicken
professionally
hat
for him.
if you brought it into me.
Any other commercials stand out to you guys? Nothing. It wasn't one of those years that you
Not
walked
really
away saying, "Oh." Wow.
Anytime you have a Clydesdale, you're golden. And they brought in the Clydesdales and the little puppy Clydesdale, the little colt, and that keg rolled off, and he pushed it with his nose all the way to this bar where it was supposed to go. First off, it's a smart little horse, and took it in there, and they were so excited to see him. But anytime you put the Clydesdales in, you're going to get a victory, especially when you've had so many problems with your product other than that.
Oh, I know what you did there, Scott.
Yeah, nothing really jumped off the screen. I thought the battery commercial with the Duracell was kind of creative when Tom Brady was talking and his batteries went out and he just kind of collapsed and they went and changed his battery. I thought that was pretty creative, but from a commercial standpoint, I wasn't that impressed by most of these commercials this year.
And they're more expensive than they've
$8
ever
million
been before.
For 30 seconds.
Yeah.
$8 million for 30 seconds, but they didn't stand out, and that's where you know what came down to the game. The game was not the game. It didn't ruin my day.
Bud.
I still love watching the Super Bowl. And
Budweiser.
Yeah, it's not like back in the day.
Yeah, I know.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Great season.
Absolutely.
Good to talk to you all.
Thank
and,
you.
We'll see what the Browns do in the offseason. Maybe have a draft special, and then we'll see you next year on the tailgate.
All right.